They told me the 13th floor was for maintenance only. They told me the elevator didn't even have a button for it. But when I stepped into the lobby of the Grand Ethelgard, exhausted from a 20-hour flight, the concierge didn't even blink when he handed me a heavy, brass key stamped with the number 13. The carpet in the hallway was a deep, velvet red, dampened so heavily that my own footsteps felt like they were being swallowed by the floorboards. The air up there tasted like ozone and antique dust, a sharp, metallic tang that coated the back of my throat. I reached the end of the long, narrow corridor, the wallpaper peeling in long, translucent strips that looked like dead skin. I unlocked the door, the mechanism groaning in protest as if it had been sealed shut for decades. The room was opulent, gold leaf molding clinging to high ceilings, but the window was blacked out with thick, velvet curtains that didn't sway even when the door slammed shut behind me. I dropped my suitcase. I felt watched. The room was cold, colder than the brisk autumn air outside. A frigid, unnatural chill that made my breath bloom in small, ghostly clouds. I walked to the edge of the queen-sized bed, my boots squeaking against the polished mahogany, and that was when the phone began to ring. It was an old model, a heavy black rotary piece that looked like it had been salvaged from a shipwreck. It didn't ring like a modern digital device, but with a sharp, piercing screech that sounded more like a human scream caught in a glass tube. I stared at it. My heart hammered against my ribs like a bird trapped in a cage. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and lifted the receiver to my ear. There was no dial tone, just silence, and then a whisper, a voice that sounded like grinding teeth. "You are standing in the center of the room," the voice said. It was a man, or perhaps a mimicry of one, his tone flat and devoid of any humanity. I froze. I looked around the room, expecting to see a hidden camera, a prankster, a madman. I spun around, my back hitting the cold glass of the balcony door. "You are looking for a lens," the voice croaked, a sickening wet sound trailing behind the words. "You will not find one. You are now turning to your left to check the wardrobe." I felt my stomach drop into the abyss. I hadn't even thought about the wardrobe, but my body moved on its own accord, drawn by a primal, sickening curiosity. I pulled the heavy handle, the doors creaking open to reveal nothing but empty wooden hangers swinging in a draft I couldn't feel. "You are breathing hard now," the voice continued, his pace accelerating. "Your pulse is 112 beats per minute. You are thinking about the door. You are thinking about running." I slammed the wardrobe shut. My hands were shaking so violently that I dropped the receiver. It dangled by its cord, swaying in the darkness, the voice still emanating from the plastic, describing my exact position as I crouched on the floor, clutching my chest. I scrambled toward the door, my fingers clawing at the brass lock, but it wouldn't turn. It felt fused, as if the metal had melted into the frame. I turned back toward the center of the room. The phone was no longer dangling. It was resting perfectly on the cradle. And then it rang again. I didn't want to answer, but my arm moved, propelled by a force that felt like wires being pulled behind my skin. I brought the receiver to my ear again. "You are staring at the reflection in the vanity mirror," the voice whispered. I looked. My face was pale, my eyes wide and bloodshot, but behind me, in the reflection, the room was different. The gold molding was rotting away. The walls were slick with a black, oily substance, and a figure stood in the corner of the reflection. It wasn't me. It was something thin, elongated, with fingers that seemed to possess too many joints, pressing against the wallpaper. I didn't turn around. I knew if I turned around, I would die. "You are holding your breath," the voice said, enjoying the terror. "You are wondering why the elevator didn't take you back down. You are wondering why the floor beneath your feet feels soft, like wet earth." I looked down. The plush carpet was gone. Beneath my feet was a thick, pulsating mass of what looked like decaying root systems, stretching out into the darkness of the room that seemed to have grown 10 times larger than it should have been. I tried to scream, but the air in my lungs turned to ash. The room was no longer a suite. It was a throat, a gullet, and I was the meal. You are realizing that the 13th floor is not a place. The voice hissed, the phone receiver growing warm and oily against my ear. It is a waiting room, and you have finally finished your wait. The lights flickered and died, leaving me in a darkness so absolute it felt physical. I could hear the figure moving now, a wet, dragging sound across the floorboards, coming closer, its breath hot and smelling of stagnant water against the back of my neck. I realized then that the voice on the phone wasn't a warning. It was a countdown, and the timer had just reached 0.